ability to keep gold in our bodies. The gold is what kept us the green, and the copper began to become more and more consolidated, especially into dark folks, into the roots that were in the sky. But the problem is now, depending on how we eat, the stress conditions, the copper binds up in the hair. That's why we can wire our copper, and that's why when we twist it, we start picking up more spiritual energies. When what happens is, because we are not in balance, the copper is leached out of our system and put into our hair. And we don't have enough iron in our hair. We have all the iron in the epithelial levels. That's why you're so dark, because all the iron is up here. But all the copper that needs to balance the iron, along with the magnesium and all of that, is up in your hair. So when people say for black folks is all susceptible to strokes and heart attacks, it's because the copper is bound up in the hair rather than in your body. So when you look at a person who had a stroke or died from a stroke or heart attack, you open them up, do an autopsy, you will see high concentrations of organic copper consolidated in the heart, as if the heart was trying to marshal as much as it can in that area to save itself. The copper they give us today is so crapped out, you don't need it. You can't get it because you're supposed to breathe that in. All the minerals you need is supposed to come upon the breath, because the minerals are simply the what they call the residual particulates of the sun that gives off the light. In other words, planets, stars are burning at this time, and the residual matter from that burning is what's coming to you as cosmic rays, and these cosmic rays are actually the minerals that you breathe in. And that's what your body recognizes. That's why I said to Queen that man is a breatharian first and last, and if man wasn't a breatharian with the shit we eat today, we'd have been dead as a species a long time ago. It is our breath that keeps us alive at the basic level. But on top of that, there's so many different complicated ways that we think and do that keeps us in disease. We don't know what we're doing. But that green part of us that we need to be taking second hand is because we can no longer filter that from the kind of light in the sun we get normally from the 7-band rays of the white spectrum. The green don't filter through too good anymore. So we take it second hand from the green plants, you see. And then no longer are we able to even synthesize that, because what the hell we do? We cook it all out. You see. So the spectrum we pick up in light, like when we dig into dark foods, that's why dark folks need to be eating dark foods. We don't need to be eating white foods. We need to eat dark foods, foods that got color, because the beauty about being our color is that we could synthesize color from our food, where white folks can't. White folks don't have the color ability. They don't have the ability to extract color because they're too white. The two energies, how do they do it? How do they keep themselves going? The pure blue-eyed, blonde-haired Aryan, green-eyed Aryan, red-haired Aryan has to keep cycling what is known as bilirubin throughout the system. And the higher levels of bilirubin, which is what your body creates, is what turns your shit brown, okay, after it's been cooked. When you cook something and you deteriorate it, it turns back into brown, which is essentially what's supposed to go back into the earth as the brown. And what happens is, the white man has a lot of that bilirubin, which is essentially shit, what do you call it, flowing through the system. So when you're looking at a real blue-eyed white man, he has high levels of bilirubin in his system because his body does not synthesize the iron and the copper properly. He needs to keep cycling whatever he can from that bilirubin in the form of nutrition so he can stay alive. The way he synthesizes his iron or changes it so it becomes heme iron is by drinking alcohol. So when you see the white man in his movies, he stands up and the first thing they open a scene with, drink. And they got to constantly be drinking. My man James Brown can go from one scene to the next, 10 scenes, and he got to open up with a glass of alcohol. Because he cannot synthesize iron into a proper hemoglobin iron unless he has that alcohol, that spirit. You got to put the spirit back in them. You see what I'm saying? And with black folks, our problem is too much iron gets caught up in the skin, and since we can't synthesize it, we need a 40. You see? So both of us are on two levels, or on two ends of the same pathological scale. But we have a lot more than he does to retaining our potential.
A lot of brothers are graduating, I know it's bad, from like the 40 to the Hennessy or the cognac. same effect as the 40?
Well, it is just the same kind of degeneration that all appetites bring in the long run. Anytime you cultivate an appetite, the appetite itself begins to cause destruction to the entity wherein it lives. And the more you partake of an appetite, the more the appetite grows and the more the appetite needs. It's a living entity in you now. It's alive. It's got a consciousness. It's got a time it sleeps and a time it wakes.
Yeah.
It's a baby inside of you that keeps crying each time.
Yeah.
You see?
It's chocolate cookies, man.
No, it's not the same, but it's the same.
It is.
Chocolate cookies.
I know what you're saying. Well, you see, here's the deal. Is the reason
I'm
we
not
do.
right.
You know why? Because it's funny you say that. Because always remember I told you, anything that creates an appetite is not a food. It's a drug. Okay? And the reason why your thing is chocolate is because chocolate has a molecule in it that emulates a molecule that you make when you're having sex. And sex is joining, unity, warmth, feelings, and so forth. So the chocolate becomes a vicarious experience. Yeah, they're warming you up at night, right? Yes, it is. Aphrodisiac is the way the word is. Aphrodisiac.
But on a more mundane level about the chlorophyll, when we were at one time we were photosynthesizers ourselves, and that's back when we were green and,
Right.
and blue. And they have found years and years ago that chlorophyll has the same molecular structure as our
Hemoglobin.
So
They interface.
so we can extract energy out of it.
Yeah, that's the thing though. If the hemoglobin is of a specific vibratory level, and that's why the hemoglobin, the interfacer for the hemoglobin and the chlorophyll was the magnesium molecule, which is missing from the body. At higher levels, you can put it back in, but it becomes such a grosser representation of that. Not the kind that you breathe in from the air, not the kind that's refined by nature, but the kind that they try to chisel out of the ground and say, hey, eat this dirt and see what you can get out of it. And that's essentially what a vitamin is, you know? Yes,
The
brother.
balance has to be there.
No, I thought you had the second question.
Oh, if anybody else has another question, I'll hold up.
No, go right ahead, brother. You don't want to, matter of fact, your vampire question kicked all this out.
This one, since the word death has an etymology that leads to the word doth, meaning the black dot or the black door, does this mean that we as black people, being living entities of the doth, don't have to go through an actual physical death to return to the soul or golden light or Amen Ra inside? And is this also what they refer to as the walking death or walking dead, I am immortal? And is a physical death the last-ditch effort for white folks to go into a black sleep and return their degenerative, recessive, graft themselves back to the blackness they wish to be?
Okay, read the first question for the people first.
Since we are living entities of the dot being all black,
Right.
even in its degenerative, do we have to actually go through an actual physical death to return to the soul or golden light or Amen Ra or Rana Locus inside?
Okay. First part of the question. Excellent question. First part of the question. The doth is the door to the Sephiroth. The Sephiroth is being the expression from the one thing. The doth is the hidden doorway back into the secret. That's the doorway that prevents you from being reabsorbed directly back into the Ein Sof. There has to be a point of resistance. All matter has a point of resistance to that call. The Darth or the death door, the Darth door, is that resistance. Okay? We forget who we are in order to bring the memory of our experience back through the door. You see, because there wouldn't be anything other than, if the door wasn't there, we wouldn't be. Okay? So death is not only a door, it's actually just a veil. You see, I mean, when you see door, you got this hard substance like that. No, it's so easy to kill, so hard to bring to life. You see, because it's easy to get back to the spirit than it is to come into the flesh and remember who you are. That part of you now where you say that the death is the white man trying to find a way back into that Darth, I'll tell you the truth. The Caucasoid has created so many Quippoloths. I don't know if you know what a Quippoloth is. Okay, the Quippoloth is essentially what happens after you pass through the door. The Quippoloth is the shell creatures. Everything is a shell. Everything is based in Quippoloth. There's no substance inside of it. He is the quintessential Quippoloth because he is all shell with no substance. He gains substance by being the quintessential parasite. He latches on to culture. He latches on to your voice, your people, your songs, everything he can to fill himself out with. So the walking dead, essentially, the walking Darth, would be represented in him, but with us, we'd be the door, which he keeps coming back to constantly go in to the inner sanctums to try to find himself. But in the world beyond the Darth is all the world of the Quippoloth, which is substanceless shells, all surfaces, the world of surfaces. And death is to get back from the surfaces into the essential. Is it the essential or the superficial? You see, that word death has so many different meanings, and it doesn't mean anything. It's just variances in the shift of awareness. In other words, how do I shift the mirror to look at myself? If I shift it this way, I no longer live. If I shift it this way, I'm in life. It's the same thing. There is the process that we see: 9 months, labor, birth. That's like blink, 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 blink. You're alive right now. We're talking blink. It doesn't even exist. It's not real. What does exist is the fact that you and I are vibrating waves back and forth to one another. The doorway now is allowing us to do that, whereas all these waves would be just one amorphous wave of intelligence and light and mind. The door allows us now, or the door of Darth allows us to be able to interface one with the next. How does Sephiroth 1 communicate with Sephiroth 6? Or Sephiroth 6 with 8? And back to 2, Bina, and back to Hokama, back to... How do they interface with one another? Through the door of the Darth. You see. Now, the first part of it, does the white man try to... Yes, he is. He is here to learn. And guess what? So are we. We are learning about death, or the Darth, or ourselves, Darth Vader. We are learning who we are through that creature. You see? We are understanding who we are based on all the things that we did in the spirit world. He's doing in the physical world. We fucked up the spirit world. We fucked up everything. We watch what happens in our children. He is showing us exactly what we did with ourselves through us growing a big head. You don't die. You don't come down to this level unless you got a big head thinking you knew it, you got it, fuck everything else, and then it came down on you. In a sense, that's the key back. After regaining all knowledge, you become very jaded. A lot of knowledge makes you very unhappy. Oh, wow. Yeah, because the information is not what yeah.
You can look it up.
Raz.
Did you see the movie?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Good movie. Good movie. Got a lot missing, but a good movie. The brothers were actually the dogs.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the brothers were the dogs.
So that was like Sirius?
Yeah, Sirius.
Part 2.
Yep, you saw Sirius versus the whole war was between Sirius and Orion.
Oh, yeah.
Orion being the vampire queen, which is essentially why she was represented as the killer, and the dogs being the poor people that were actually the slaves of the vampires, and they rebelled.
I sent the script to Hollywood about vampires fighting werewolves.
Get out.
Really? How long
Yeah.
ago?
But when I found out it was a black guy who wrote it, I
Yeah.
wasn't that mad.
I hear you.
How long ago did you say this?
That must have been about 1996. And it took a while. That's about right.
Yeah, it's about time. Yeah, about right. Is the camera running? Oh, okay. Part 2 of your question. The second part of the question after you had said was the white man.
That was basically the question, as we as natural dots going back into it without going to the physical death, and then, the immortal, or I am mortal, and,
Yeah.
Has he tricked us into believing in the physical death?
The reason, no, see, he has tricked us into believing that this physical life is the real life. He wants us to stay in the body because there's nothing else for him. Without us in the body for him to learn from, he doesn't grow a soul. He doesn't energize a soul. And it's funny how he's tricked us into believing that we're equal in our vibrational rates as an entity. In other words, we're all humans. Yes, we are, but there are variations in the theme. The different cultures all show a gravitation to the planet, an empathy for the planet, where he never did. He never really had a deeper connection to the planet than he had when he began his madness into the world. So with his confusion about what life really is based upon what he was doing in his parts before he ventured out all over the planet, when he began to take to the seas and use the science of the cultures that had come and seen him and he had conquered and so forth, and began to grow himself in awareness, he began to become more spiritually in tune to the planet only after he had assimilated into or conquered an entity, and he had assimilated them, started drinking their blood, taking their life force, doing all of that. That's how he began to say, well, I'm like you, and no, you're not like me. Why was there so much information about him being the devil? Why was there so much information about all the wickedness that he, under his flag, had done? I mean, I can't find anywhere in the annals of what they call African history and Asian history, though it was bloody and brutal, I can never find the kind of brutality and ongoing quest for just a senseless superiority other than in him, as he is like the qualified, quantified representation of all the evil that any of the entities called melanated people could have ever expressed themselves as. Why is he now imbued with that responsibility to be the end-all and be-all of all forms of destruction that we could ever do? Unless he is here for us to learn from. Yeah.
Also, to add on to that, I always wanted to know is that, as you talked about, they want us to believe that this is physical realm is all that there is.
Right.
If we collectively stop thinking about them, would they really vanish? The reason I said that is it seems like they always fucking want us to keep us or keep them on our mind,
Right.
so that they can have an existence.
Yeah.
I always wanted,
That's exactly. If you look at which one of the code breakers or which one of this is that, if they keep your attention, they stay alive. When you lose their attention for them, as we would normally do, going back into our business,
Right.
they would not have a point of reference for feeding anymore. They've created a hierarchy where they have become they have consolidated the world and how people think and behave around what's best for them. They call it politics, they call it economics, they call it religion. And all of these activities that they've created are ways that they feed on all levels to give them their substance. We pulling the plug, all of that is based in attention. If I pay attention to a 9 to 5, then I give that reality and legitimacy.
Right.
If I pay attention to the fact that I need lights, when I could just strike a match or burn some wood, I give them that attention, then you give them legitimacy, and that's it. So when you start pulling your attention in all formats, you no longer look at his God. I don't mean his God just in the religion, his God of economics, which is money. You don't look for his God of distraction, for entertainment, Loki. All of his different gods that you worship based upon your behavior, your matter-of-fact behavior, which is even crazier because you do it thinking that this is what life is. Once you pull your attention from that and shift it to someplace else, he dies for lack of attention, because that attention is so tied into everything in the world and everything you do and are in this world that without that, he dies. There's nothing he can come after you and try to shoot you and kill you, but then he needs you. So what does he do? He enslaves you, but then by enslaving you, he kills himself, because after a while the slaves are going to revolt. He's going to know that there's nothing that's going to be able to keep the human spirit down. His time will come, and they retract back into the sea. See, that's the thing. A cancer, once you cut off the part that's the cancer, it recedes back deeper into the organ that it's affected. So if you don't kill him at the root, killing all all the roots to his sickness, then it comes up later on inside of the new body that thinks it's well. And then it starts coming up again, and it's like, we start founding America, what a beautiful place, we have, what do you call it, freedom. All of a sudden this thing starts growing in it, and the cancer's here. It never left. It keeps going from generation to generation, civilization to civilization. So when man switches its attention, gets its focus out of its appetites, which is what they cultivate in order to maintain their power over you. Once you understand how appetites are cultivated to maintain your slavery, then your appetites are no longer a point of reference for them to control you with, and they have no more control. They got to show who they really are. And that's when they come out with the guns and killing you in the streets to get rid of all those people who are helping other people to know who they are, and thus shift their attention, you see. So, yeah, they maintain your attention with the TV. Like when you say you're looking at TV, you hear something on the TV, you automatically look up and you look at it and you say, well, what the fuck I do that for? Because I saw it already. That's how they do it. It's because they're programming you at that point in your amygdala. That's your reactive mind. That's the reptilian brain that sits right at the base, right at the top of the spine, as the root stem of the brain. There's a little piece right there. That's the reptilian brain. That's where you get pissed off real quick. That's where you want to kill a motherfucker. And then on top of that, you have the other layers of brain that represent your higher nature, which is the frontal lobes. They keep you from dealing in the frontal lobes by not allowing you the environment, the words, and the specific circumstances necessary to cultivate the intelligence in the frontal lobe. They keep you back here. And they do it by switching the amygdala. They keep the amygdala going backwards towards the lower brain, when the amygdala can be clicked forward into the frontal brain, you see. But the appetites that you take in, the specific things that's in your water, in your foods, it keeps this part atrophied and keeps you thinking in the lower brain. So once we get out of the amygdala, once we get out of the back flow of the amygdala, the back end of the amygdala, dealing with the reptilian brain, once we get out of reptilian brain and get into frontal lobe thinking, he's over. It's over for him. That's why education is in the reptilian brain. It's not in the frontal lobes. He trains his children for frontal lobe thinking, because he trains them to teach, to keep you in lockdown.
Now, will this be an actual progression for us to move toward the frontal lobe? Or is it something that has to be brought about by...
Well, it looks like today it's going to come out by violent change. I don't think anything is going to save this. It can't, because it's a rubber band stretched too taut for it to come back, because the stretching alone has taken away its integrity. There has to be some kind of monumental cataclysm that destroys this thing that keeps our attention on it. Once the human attention has been traumatized, which is why Mars is so close to the planet again, like I told you. The reason why Mars is so close to the planet, because everybody is stuck in this religious concept of civilization. We keep thinking about politics as our thing. Here come another asshole leader that's going to drain you dry, fuck you for every dime and everything you got, and we put this asshole in office. And there's somebody coming up there, I will give you this, and the same goddamn speech with another talking head, and we're listening to him as if something is going to change inside of that. We are hypnotically connected to this paradigm, and until something drastic happens to completely sever our connection to it, to wake us up with a violent slap, nothing's going to change. Yes, brother.
I was going to ask you later on Mars,